Welcome to my channel HFY Universe. The distress call had been screaming through the galaxy for 17 days. Nobody answered. Not the mighty empires. Not the ancient federations. Not the fleets that claimed to protect civilization. Because everyone knew what was coming. And everyone was afraid. On the dying world of Valora Prime, billions waited beneath dark skies while colossal shadows moved above the clouds. The monsters had returned. Entire cities vanished overnight. Orbital defenses disappeared without firing a shot. Warships entered the atmosphere and never came back. No one even knew what the creatures truly looked like. Only that they came from the black expanse. And nothing survived them. Then, as the last planetary shield collapsed, a terrified Valoran operator sent one final message into the stars. "Help us, please. Anyone, help us." The transmission traveled across thousands of systems. Past military checkpoints. Past abandoned colonies. Past worlds that silently ignored it. Until it reached a tiny blue planet at the edge of explored space. Earth. And for the first time in 17 days, someone answered. Governor Celine Var stared at the holographic display inside the underground command bunker. Her silver eyes were red from exhaustion. Around her, military officers sat in silence. They already knew the outcome. Valora Prime was dead. The only question was how long they had left. "Any responses?" she asked quietly. The communications officer hesitated. "One." The room turned. Celine frowned. "Who?" The officer enlarged the signal. Several confused expressions appeared. A few officers exchanged looks. One even laughed. "Humans." The room erupted. "Those primitives. They don't even rank among the major powers. They still use emotional decision-making. They've never fought the black expanse." Celine raised a hand. The room fell silent. "Show me." The message began. A man appeared on screen. Middle-age. Simple military uniform. No medals. No dramatic background. Just calm eyes. "My name is Commander Ethan Cross of the Terran Defense Fleet." His voice was steady. "We received your distress call." Behind him, alarms echoed faintly. Celine noticed something strange. The human looked tired. Not afraid. Not worried. Just tired. "As of this moment," Ethan continued, "Earth recognizes Valora Prime as a protected civilian zone." The room froze. Protected. By humanity. Ethan leaned slightly forward. "Hold on a little longer." The transmission ended. Silence filled the bunker. Then laughter exploded throughout the room. Several officers nearly doubled over. One admiral shook his head. "The humans are insane." Another smirked. "They probably have one outdated fleet. They don't understand what they're facing." Celine didn't laugh. Something bothered her. The human's eyes. He had spoken like someone discussing bad weather. Not extinction. Not planetary annihilation. Just another difficult day. Somehow. That was terrifying. 3 days later. The monsters arrived. Every sensor on Valora Prime erupted with warnings. Massive distortions appeared beyond the moon. Then the darkness emerged. Thousands of them. Their surfaces absorbed light. Their shapes constantly shifted. Looking at them too long caused headaches. Panic spread instantly. The planetary population understood. This was the end. The Black Expanse fleet moved toward the world. Slowly. Confidently. Like predators approaching wounded prey. Then something impossible happened. A single signal appeared. One ship exiting hyperspace. Only one. Military officers stared at the display in disbelief. That's it. One vessel. The unknown ship positioned itself between Valora Prime and the approaching armada. Against thousands. Alone. The vessel was small by military standards. Primitive compared to modern warships. No advanced energy wings. No exotic alien architecture. Just cold metal. Functional. Simple. Human. Commander Ethan Cross appeared on every channel. Valora Prime. His voice echoed across the planet. "We're here." A nervous officer interrupted. "Commander, where is the rest of your fleet?" For the first time Ethan smiled. Not proudly. Not arrogantly. Almost sadly. "They're coming." Then the transmission ended. Deep within the enemy armada, Supreme Devourer Tsar watched the human vessel. He felt amusement. The galaxy always resisted. For a while, this was simply another doomed attempt. Destroy it. Thousands of weapons charged simultaneously. The void glowed. Enough firepower to erase continents. The barrage launched. Valoran citizens watched in horror. The lone human ship vanished inside a storm of destruction. Everyone knew what came next. Nothing could survive that. Nothing. Then the sensors malfunctioned. At least that's what everyone assumed. Because the human ship was still there. Untouched. Perfectly intact. The entire planet fell silent. Tsar narrowed his eyes. For the first time in centuries, confusion touched him. The human vessel slowly advanced. One ship. Against an armada. Against impossible odds. Against creatures that had slaughtered civilizations for thousands of years. Somehow, it wasn't retreating. It was moving forward. Far beyond the battle. Something awakened. Hidden beneath the oceans of Earth. Buried under mountains. Sleeping inside forgotten facilities older than most galactic governments. Ancient systems activated. Massive doors opened. Emergency protocols spread across the planet. Human commanders received the same message. A message nobody had seen in generations. Project Cerberus authorized. Planetary Defense Condition Omega. The monsters had finally returned. And humanity had decided to stop hiding. Back at Valora Prime, alarms suddenly erupted. Hundreds. Then thousands. Then millions. New hyperspace signatures appeared across every sensor grid. Military officers stared in horror. The numbers kept rising. No computer could count them fast enough. Celine felt her heart stop. How many ships is that? Nobody answered. Because the scanners had reached their limit. Then the first vessels emerged. And the second wave. And the third. An endless tide of human warships pouring from hyperspace. Not hundreds. Not thousands. Millions. The stars themselves disappeared behind steel. The galaxy had believed humanity possessed a modest defensive fleet. The galaxy had been wrong. Terribly wrong. And as Commander Ethan Cross watched the impossible armada arrive, he whispered a sentence that would soon terrify the entire universe. "Wake the monsters of Earth." The stars vanished. That was the first thing the people of Valora Prime noticed. Not because night had fallen. Not because of clouds. But because millions of human warships now filled the sky. Every direction. Every sensor. Every orbital lane. Engines. Weapons. An endless wall of Earth-made vessels. The Black Expanse armada slowed for the first time in recorded history. Supreme Devourer Tsar stared at the incoming fleet. His 4 black eyes narrowed. Something was wrong. For thousands of years, civilizations had reacted the same way. Fear. Panic. Desperation. But the humans looked prepared. Well, not prepared. Waiting. As if this moment had been expected. As if humanity had spent centuries anticipating the return of monsters. Tsar felt a strange sensation. Unease. It irritated him. Nothing in the galaxy frightened the devourers. Nothing. Yet the feeling remained. Growing stronger. Governor Celine Var watched the human armada emerge. Every new hyperspace signature brought another wave of disbelief. Entire formations stretched beyond sensor range. Gigantic carriers. Heavy battleships. Escort fleets. Support vessels. Ships unlike anything known to the galactic archives. And there were so many. Too many. An officer beside her whispered. Where were they hiding? Nobody answered. 'Cause nobody knew. Humanity had never displayed military strength on this scale. Never even hinted at it. The official records described Earth as cautious. Defensive. Moderately capable. Nothing more. Apparently, every record had been a lie. A transmission suddenly appeared across all frequencies. Commander Ethan Cross. Again. But this time he wasn't alone. Several human officers stood behind him. One elderly woman stepped forward. Her silver hair was tied back, and her eyes were calm in a way that made the room uneasy. "My name is Director Eleanor Hayes," she said quietly. "For 300 years humanity has monitored activity originating from the Black Expanse." Shock spread through Valoran Command. 300 years. The Black Expanse had barely been understood for half that time. Hayes continued. "We discovered evidence of previous extinction cycles." Images appeared behind her. Destroyed civilizations. Dead worlds. Ancient ruins. Entire species erased from existence. The room became silent. Each cycle followed the same pattern. Another image appeared. The monsters. The devourers. "We learned something important," Hayes said. Her expression darkened. "They aren't invincible." Even Ethan looked uncomfortable hearing those words. Celine noticed. And that frightened her more than anything. Because if the humans knew how to kill these creatures, what had they done to discover it? Inside the flagship of the Black Expanse, Tsar laughed. A deep, terrible sound. "Humans," he said with contempt. "You believe yourselves hunters." Entire worlds had attempted resistance. Entire empires. All had fallen. Humanity would be no different. Tsar raised one claw. "Destroy them." The armada advanced. Thousands of weapons charged. Space itself distorted under the energy buildup. The barrage launched. Valora Prime shook from the distant energy surge. The sky became white, then black, then white again. Billions watched, holding their breath. The human fleet remained motionless, waiting. The attack reached them, and vanished, not blocked, not absorbed. As though reality itself had swallowed it. Silence spread across every battlefield channel. Tsar stopped laughing. Then the humans attacked. No dramatic speeches. No battle cries. No warnings. Just action. Thousands of human ships fired simultaneously. The beams looked ordinary, almost unimpressive, until they struck. The first Devourer vessel exploded instantly. Not damaged. Not disabled. The second followed. Then a third. Then 100. Then 1,000. Entire enemy formations disappeared. The battlefield erupted into chaos. Valoran officers stared in disbelief. "Impossible," one whispered. The monsters had always seemed immortal, untouchable. Yet human weapons tore through them like paper. For the first time in history, the Black Expanse fleet was losing. Far below Earth, Project Cerberus continued to awaken. Massive facilities opened beneath oceans. Mountain ranges split apart. Ancient launch silos emerged from hidden valleys. Gigantic machines began moving. Machines that had never appeared in any human military database. Machines built in secret. Prepared for a war nobody else knew was coming. Deep underground, automated systems repeated the same message. Threat level confirmed. Containment protocols terminated. Release authorization accepted. The sleeping assets are now active. Across Earth, military commanders exchanged uneasy looks. Even among humans, very few knew what Project Cerberus truly contained. And those who did, rarely spoke about it. Back above Valora Prime, victory seemed possible. For the first time, the monsters were retreating. Devourer formations broke apart. Human fleets pushed forward relentlessly. Hope spread across the planet. People cried, celebrated, embraced one another. Maybe they would survive. Maybe humanity really could save them. Then every sensor in the system failed. Instantly. Completely. Darkness filled every screen, every scanner, every display. A wave of dread swept through command centers. "I've lost everything," someone shouted. Then something emerged. Not a ship, not a fleet. Something else. Something enormous. Something ancient. A colossal shape drifted out from a tear in space itself. The object was larger than cities, larger than moons, larger than anything ever recorded. And when Supreme Devourer Tsar saw it, he froze. Absolute terror appeared on his face. Not fear, not concern, terror, the kind prey feels before death. Governor Celine stared at the image. "Commander Cross," she whispered. "What is that?" For several seconds, Ethan said nothing. His expression had become grim, almost sorrowful. Finally he answered. "That's the reason humanity built Project Cerberus." The gigantic entity opened a single glowing eye. Entire fleets drifted from its shadow. Devourer fleets, thousands of them, ancient, destroyed, enslaved, controlled, like trophies, like victims. Then Ethan whispered words that shattered every assumption about the war. "The monsters attacking your world. We're running from something. The monsters attacking your world." Ethan Cross stared at the impossible being emerging from the darkness. "We're running from something." Silence followed. Terrible silence. Across Valora Prime, billions watched the giant shape drift through the void. Even the Black Expanse fleet stopped fighting. Every weapon, every ship, every commander, frozen. Because the thing emerging from the rift was not simply large. Felt wrong. Like reality itself rejected its existence. Governor Celine felt her hands shaking. For the first time since the invasion began, she saw genuine fear on Ethan's face. Because humans had faced the Black Expanse without hesitation. This was different. Supreme Devourer Tsar fell to one knee. His crew stared in disbelief. They had never seen such behavior. Not from him. Not from any devourer. Tsar's voice trembled. "The Harbinger." The word spread through every enemy vessel. Terror followed it. Ancient terror. For thousands of years the Devourers had conquered worlds. Destroyed civilizations. Consumed entire star systems. But long ago, they had been prey. And the Harbinger had been the hunter. Inside the human flagship, alarms echoed through every corridor. Officers rushed between stations. Battle predictions updated every second. None looked good. Director Eleanor Hayes entered the command center. The prison failed. Ethan nodded. 300 years earlier, explorers beyond mapped space had discovered a dead galaxy. Every star extinguished. Every planet lifeless. At its center they found one survivor. One creature. Leaping. Humanity awakened it by accident. Millions died before they understood what they had found. Entire colonies vanished. Nothing could stop it. So humanity chose another solution. They imprisoned it. For 3 centuries Earth secretly maintained that prison, preparing for the day it might fail. That day had arrived. The Harbinger moved. One motion. Nothing more. A nearby Devourer battleship simply ceased to exist. No explosion. No debris. The battlefield fell silent. Then panic erupted. The Black Expanse fleet turned and fled. Thousands of ships accelerating at maximum speed. Running. The monsters that had terrified the galaxy were running for their lives. Celine stared in disbelief. Humans had been right. The Devourers weren't conquerors. They were refugees. Refugees hiding from something worse. Humans are different. The words escaped Celine before she realized it. She pointed toward the human fleet. They knew. Nobody answered. Because everyone understood. Humanity had known about this nightmare for centuries. And instead of abandoning the galaxy, they stayed. They prepared. They waited. Not for conquest. Not for power. For this moment. To protect others from something they barely contain themselves. For the first time admiration replaced fear. Then the Harbinger noticed Earth. Every sensor registered the same thing. The giant eye turned. Directly toward humanity's fleet. Ethan's blood ran cold. It remembers us. 300 years trapped inside a human-made prison. The creature would never forget. And never forgive. The eye brightened. Base began to distort. Human ships nearest the effect were crushed instantly. Hundreds disappeared. Then thousands. The first losses appeared across Ethan's display. The bridge became silent. A young officer looked toward him. "What are your orders, sir?" Ethan stared at the casualty reports. Then toward Valora Prime. Billions of civilians still depended on them. If humanity retreated now, everyone would die. Slowly he stood. "Signal all fleets." The officer swallowed. "All fleets?" Ethan nodded. "Operation Last Shield begins immediately." The room froze. Because everyone knew what that order meant. No one expected to survive. Across millions of ships, the message arrived. Crew members read it. And prepared. No panic followed. A Marine smiled sadly at a photograph of his family. Pilot whispered goodbye. An engineer closed his eyes for a moment. Then they returned to work. Ready. The alien observers watching human communications couldn't understand it. Why weren't they running? Why were they preparing to fight something unbeatable? Celine finally understood. Humans didn't fight because they believed they would win. They fought because someone needed them to stand, even if it killed them. The Harbinger accelerated. Entire fleets shattered before it. Yet the humans advanced. Closer, closer, closer. Millions of ships charging directly toward a cosmic nightmare. And for the first time in thousands of years, the Harbinger stopped. Not because it was damaged. Not because it was afraid. 'Cause it was confused. The creature had destroyed galaxies. Yet these fragile beings kept coming. Again, and again, and again. As though protecting strangers mattered more than survival. The Harbinger stared at humanity. And for the first time, hesitated. Then Earth transmitted a signal. One message. Broadcast across the battlefield. Commander Ethan Cross stood before the camera. Smoke filled the bridge behind him. Warning alarms screamed. Yet he smiled. A tired human smile. "If you're hearing this." He paused. "Take your people and run." Celine felt her heart sink. Because she suddenly knew what humanity was about to do. Far beyond the battlefield, hidden deep inside the solar system, ancient structures began activating. Thousands of them. The true purpose of Project Cerberus. Weapons powerful enough to destroy stars. Weapons humanity had sworn never to use. Till now. Ethan looked toward the approaching Harbinger. Then whispered one final sentence. "Forgive us." And across the galaxy a countdown began. The countdown echoed across the galaxy. Every military channel. Every civilian network. Every surviving fleet. Billions watched in silence. No one truly understood what humanity was about to do. But they understood one thing. The humans were preparing to sacrifice everything. The Harbinger moved again. Entire human formations vanished before it. Battleships were crushed like dust. Carriers disappeared into twisted fragments of reality. Yet the Terran fleet continued forward. Ship after ship. Wave after wave. Refusing to retreat. Supreme Devourer Tsar stared in disbelief. For thousands of years he had believed strength meant domination. Fear. Power. Control. Humans believed something different. They fought for people who weren't even their own species. They fought for strangers. Somehow. That made them stronger than anything he had ever known. Humans are different. The words escaped him quietly. For the first time in his life, Tsar felt admiration. 7. 5. Deep within the solar system, Project Cerberus reached full activation. Ancient stations emerged from hidden locations. Massive structures unfolded around distant stars. Machines built over centuries came online. Humanity's final defense. Not against empires. Not against fleets. Against the Harbinger. Against the end of everything. Director Eleanor Hayes watched the status reports appear one after another. Online. 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 Thousands of confirmations. Years of preparation. Generations of sacrifice. all leading to this moment. On Valora Prime, Governor Celine stood among civilians gathered outside the shelters. Many were crying. Many were praying. They watched the human fleet burn across the sky. A child standing beside her looked up. Why are they staying? Celine stared at the distant battle. At the ships dying one after another. At the species that could have hidden behind its own borders. And chose not to. Because that's who they are. The child nodded slowly. Though she wasn't sure he fully understood. Truthfully, neither did she. Not completely. For 3. The Harbinger finally reached the center of the battlefield. Its giant eye glowed brighter than a star. Reality bent around it. Entire sectors of space cracked. The creature prepared to erase everything in its path. Then it noticed something. Human ships. Thousands of them. Not attacking. Positioning. Forming a massive sphere around the creature. Age. The same design humanity had used centuries earlier. The Harbinger understood. And for the first time, became angry. The giant being unleashed a wave of destruction. Hundreds of human vessels disappeared instantly. Then thousands. But the formation held. Barely. Ethan gripped his command chair. Blood ran from one side of his face. Warning alarms screamed around him. Still he refused to look away. Hold the line. The order spread across the fleet. Somehow, they did. 1. Director Hayes closed her eyes. Ethan took a slow breath. Across Earth, millions of people watched the final second arrive. No cheering. No celebration. Only silence. Then the countdown reached 0. Nothing happened. For a moment. Just one moment. Then the stars themselves changed. Thousands of hidden Cerberus stations fired simultaneously. Columns of light crossed the galaxy. Not toward planets. Not toward fleets. Toward the cage. Toward the Harbinger. The energy converged. Space collapsed inward. The battlefield disappeared inside a sphere of white light. Every screen across the galaxy went blank. Every sensor failed. No one could see what happened next. Minutes passed. Then hours. Silence filled the stars. Finally the sensors returned. Slowly. Weakly. One signal appeared. Then another. And another. The battlefield was gone. The Harbinger was gone. The Rift was gone. The Black Expanse fleet was gone. Everything had vanished. Governor Celine felt hope rise. Until she checked the human fleet registry. The numbers froze her blood. Millions of ships had entered the battle. Only a handful remained. The cost had been unimaginable. Humanity had won. But they had paid for that victory with their own blood. Days later, representatives from hundreds of species gathered above Valora Prime. Not for a military summit. Not for negotiations. For remembrance. For gratitude. For humanity. The galaxy finally learned the truth. For centuries humans had carried the burden alone. Guarding a nightmare no one else knew existed. Preparing for a war they hoped would never come. When the moment arrived, they stood between the darkness and everyone else. Even knowing the price. A final transmission was recovered from Commander Ethan Cross's flagship. The recording played across countless worlds. Ethan appeared tired. Injured. But smiling. If you're watching this. He paused. Then humanity did its job. Smoke drifted behind him. The bridge lights flickered. We were never the strongest species. He laughed softly. We were never the smartest either. Another pause. But when someone needs protecting. His eyes seemed to look directly at the viewer. Humans don't quit. The recording ended. Years passed. Then decades. Then centuries. The story spread to every corner of known space. Children learned it in schools. Captains repeated it aboard starships. Entire civilizations honored the day. Not as a victory, but as a lesson. Reminder. Because the galaxy eventually realized something extraordinary. The most dangerous creatures from Earth were never the secret weapons. Never Project Cerberus. Never the massive fleets. The true monsters of Earth were ordinary humans. The ones who would stand against impossible odds. The ones who would sacrifice everything for people they loved. Or even people they had never met. And that was why the galaxy would never forget them. Because when the stars cried out for help, humanity answered. And when the monsters came, the monsters of Earth answered first.